Hi Tomruk, I'm going to give you some feedback here on your writings number 1. As you may have seen already, I've corrected your text and I have uploaded my corrections on iScore. There might also be some commentary in there for you to consider, things that I'd like you to address regarding how you've written your text. The purpose of this is that I'm going to kind of sum up my general impression of your text as well as the corrections that I've already made. So it's a good idea for you to look at the text while you're listening to what I have to say. I'm going to firstly talk about your organization and the structuring of your text, and then come maybe into a little bit about sort of what you can do in future in terms of improving the next written exercise. The first thing, if we begin with the beginning, the first thing I noticed is that you don't actually frame this text or introduce the text. So the way that you start, if I can just read this for you. At first, intervention as a way of ending violent conflicts may seem as the only option to avoid an annihilation of the lesser party, however, from a moral standpoint, and then you're kind of off. Now, what the reader yet has to discover is, who the hell says this? Remember that I've asked you to write an article for the British Army Review. So you have not just me. In fact, I'm the recipient. I'm the judge, as it were, of what you're doing. But the recipient, the intended recipient, is actually a fictional reader who is picking up a copy of British Army Review and comes across a young junior officer who's decided to review Edward Ludwig in a kind of a modern perspective. We need to know this. So we need to know what's your purpose, who are you talking about, what has he said about war, and why is this either relevant or irrelevant or amoral even from a modern perspective. So make sure that you keep that in mind. It's also a way of you to kind of hook your reader, and it also tells me as the judge, I suppose, that you're able to tailor your text to a particular reader, because this requires something different than, for instance, if you were writing an essay, an academic essay, or if you're writing an op-ed, if leesbaar. So you are in the business of informing, but also persuading your readership. And you have to sort of strategize and figure out how you want to do that. Right, so that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing that I look at has to do with paragraphs. So keep your paragraphs to one clear message. So one clear message per paragraph. And make sure that there's coherence between the paragraphs so that the reader always knows, why am I reading this? How is it connected to what I've just read? And how does that fit in with the general message, the overall message? Is the author building up his argument in order to get to the punchline, or am I reading a description of Ludwig in order to understand the counter-arguments, etc.? So that has to be clear to the reader. And this, I think, is a question of you reading your text in your editing phase more critically. Try and adopt a reader perspective here. In order to figure out if your reader is still with you, you have to pretend to be a reader. Quite that simple. So that would be a kind of a suggestion for me to do, for you to do in the future. Despite the many comments that you see in your text, I think that you write reasonably well. So there's a lot for you here to build on. So what we're talking about, the things that you have to consider are on the global, general level, on the local level, sort of to do with grammatical structures, how you're able to use grammatical structures, vocabulary, grammatical errors in choice of words. Those things I think you've got a pretty good grasp on. So I have very little to say to you on the localized level. So it's one of those texts that kind of pulls in two directions. So the way that you write on the local level is actually above average, but when I look at how the text is structured and how you have kind of organized what you want to say, it's more average than above average. So it's kind of in that in between. So in the future, make sure that you know what your purpose is and what the purpose of each paragraph is. Make sure you adopt this reader perspective when you read through your text, and then consider what is the expectation of this text. What genre, basically, am I writing in? I suspect, I don't know if this is true, I suspect you were treating this more like an short academic essay or exploration rather than an article. So just be aware that this is something that I do pay attention to, and you need to be able to deal with as a writer, to tailor your communication. Okay, I think that's all I have to say to you. I haven't told you a grade. If you'd like me to, come and see me in class. Some people don't want grades, other people find them very useful. I don't care really what you choose. As long as I see that you progress between written work, then I'm happy. But I don't necessarily need to give you a grade, so that's completely up to you. But either way, I will see you in class sometime in the fall. Bye.